Is there a centre-right libertarian movement going on across the Western world at the moment?
I think there is. And I think a big part of it is that during the COVID era, a lot of what libertarians kind of were predicting were problems in society and in governments really came to roost. Things that people said were conspiratorial weren't actually true. We started seeing governments do. So I think it's naturally forced people to look a little bit more critically at that fundamental relationship between citizens and the state.
Yes, well, you've also got the wonderful apple-eating Pierre, who was trolling the left-wing press over in Canada. He was one of our favourites over here in Australia because there's a whole meme that goes on the movie review channels about eat an apple and look more like an asshole. And so I'm sure he knows that or is aware of that. So when he was running around eating an apple on the press, we were killing ourselves laughing. Is it like refreshing to have that happening in Canada? Because Canada has not been the most conservative political places in the world lately.
No, and I'd say, I mean, even if you go back to when Canada had a conservative prime minister, which we did up until 2015, there were things that happened that I think were very good, that, a lot of conservatives supported. But the big picture institutional issues and the institutions that really were forcing society to the left remained unchanged. So the second you change government, you have a liberal come in, they're just starting from a place of more power. It's like our mutual friend Mark Stein always says, when conservatives are in power, or when conservatives are elected, they're in office, and when liberals are elected, they're in power. And I think that's a big problem we've seen across the right, whether it's the UK conservatives, the Australian liberals, the Canadian conservatives, even the Republicans. The really big cultural issues remain the left's domain, and they're the ones that keep winning these fights. So I do think it is. I mean, just for that id in ourselves that wants to see a politician smack down media, chomping down on the apple is really, really cathartic. It's really therapeutic to see. But underlying that is, I think, something very fundamental. And this is what's unique in Canadian politics, which is a conservative leader that's not accepting the left's premises and not accepting the media's premises, which has really been the downfall of his three predecessors.
Yes, well, in Australia, we had Jacinta Price, an Indigenous Australian and also a conservative, and her claim to fame and rise to fame was when she would stand in front of the left-wing press. We had The Guardian over here asking questions about, how terrible is colonialism and what are the impacts of colonialism on Indigenous communities. And she'd sit there and say, it's been positive because we've got running water, we've got a legal system, we've got protection, and that floors them. They have no idea what to do with somebody if they refuse to adhere to the victimhood cultural ideology that's going on. And that makes people like Jacinta Price very powerful, because the left-wing power against conservatives has always been control of the press and control of the narrative. If you reject the narrative, there's nothing else underneath it, is there, Andrew? Like, if you say no to that narrative, they don't have a follow-up question.
No, they don't. And I've always, because media bias is a real thing and it's fairly universal. And I think we can all kind of agree that media bias tends to work against people on the right. But I've always said to conservatives, the media will criticize the left. The media will criticize lefties. The thing that I've noted, though, is that when they go after the left, it's because the politician hasn't lived up to the ideal of what someone on the left is supposed to be. When they go after someone on the right, it's for being conservative. They're going after them for their core beliefs. And the questions are all variations of, why are you not more like the left? So you're right. When you have someone that is unapologetic, someone that's not going to feel the need to apologize for what they believe and for who they are, they really don't have a follow-up question. And I liken it to, when I've been play fighting with dogs in my life and they're, trying to chew at your arm. The second you stop resisting, they just stop there with their jaw open because they don't know what they're supposed to be doing anymore. And conservatives have to actually get into this and not give them what they want, which is what they've been giving them every single time this comes up.